Girardi, John Steinmetz, Jason Federico, town engineer, Don Piet, town financial officer, and Carl Hillstrom. And we're here today to discuss the budget and rate study. Who wants to open with some ideas, suggestions?
I will just open by saying I thought Jason's email on the third tier was very helpful, and I reviewed it closely.
Okay. Now, which email was that one?
It's dated March 24th.
Okay. Oh, So what do you suggest we do?
Well, I think Jason's email spells out that the average increase for the average customer is going to be 2.5% with the rate increase. Jason then goes on to say in his analysis that for an apartment customer, the average increase is going to be 7.69%, which is 3 times as much as the average customer. And then for commercial with tier 3, the average commercial increase is going to be 12%, which is, substantially higher than the 2.5. My view of it is that we can't lawfully pass a rate study that's going to have a disparate impact on different people. So I go back to, I believe, Jason's suggestion of taking the third tier out for apartment and for commercial makes sense to stop the disparate treatment under the current rate study.
Okay, but if the average user is getting a 2.5% increase, and that's under tier 3, Jason?
No, because the average user doesn't get to tier 3. The average user,
Okay,
by
the average
definition,
is
is
getting a
65
2.5%.
gallons per capita per day, which gets you to only tier 2.
okay,
usage.
so your average user is getting a 2.5% increase. Your average apartment with the tier 3 is getting a 7.69% increase. Now, what is your other customer who is getting, the other several hundred customers getting as an average increase?
Big. I mean, if you
Big.
use a lot of water, your increase is big. I mean, it's an average of, I don't know, because everybody uses water differently. I mean, there's one person's bill who's going up $6,000, but their base bill currently is $18,000. So I don't know, like, what's the average change? It varies based on how much irrigation they do.
But I think the distinction here is that the customer who Jason is talking about is someone, it's based solely on use and them getting into tier 3. Whereas a person can be an apartment owner and never go above 65 gallons a day and still get to tier 3 and have a 7.69% increase.
I was looking at several of the apartments in Avalon, which is basically what we're dealing with, I presume. And
Right.
there seem to be very strange numbers there. Some of them are extremely low, and there are a couple that are very high, and it's not high across the board. It just doesn't seem to follow a pattern. It looks as though there are issues in the building during the high times because they're not irrigating. Everybody has the same fixtures and appliances. And, you take a look at something that goes from a $222 to $88 to $59 to $22, and you say, something seems wrong with that picture. A lot of them are in the single digit numbers. Some of them, were 13, 10, 14, 954. But there were just those other ones that jump right out at you. And I would wonder whether or not we could have looked at a little larger historical billing of the units before we draw these conclusions that, well, gee whiz, because a couple of them are high, we should say, forget this whole block. Because some of those apartments are bigger than some of the houses in town. And if you take a look at the 9-page spreadsheet that Jason said, the first person who was a single family home on that spreadsheet, they had leaks. I looked up, I had Brenda send me her information. And, she was irrigating, I'll give you that. But taking a look at what she was using didn't really look the same as what's on this spreadsheet. If you look back into prior bills, they were not as high as this. So I'm just wondering, what are we going to do? Just say, forget apartments, people who were living in those places and commercial. I can agree forgetting commercial, but I still have an issue about some of the apartments. Now, another thing, how are we going to make up for this? Can we give the town the tier 2? Because that was something that was dropped years ago when we dropped the rate. We should probably be cleaning that up. How does anybody feel about that? Because that is not something that comes out of the ratepayers, that comes out of the taxpayers. And John, you know that you and I will be taxed higher on that.
I'm fine with giving the town tier 2.
Same here.
Okay.
But yeah, like I said, the flip side to that would be, would this prevent us going forward with a rate increase, going through the various boards to town meeting? That's the only reservation I would have. Where they say, yeah, stop. No, I don't know. I don't know the end. You guys are more experienced than I am, and I don't know. I mean, it's a great idea. I don't think it, because I think what Lee's, if I understand Lee, is like almost spreading the wealth over everybody, letting the town pay its fair share. But I don't know. I just want to throw that out there. Just trying to play a little devil advocate.
Well,
I think
go ahead, John.
I think Lee mentioned the town has a surplus of cash, so this is not going to result in tax hikes.
No. And the other thing too is we have a lot of customers that are very concerned about the base charge going up. And I think by spreading this amongst the taxpayers, this will help the base charge. And that we won't be looking at possibly having to increase it after maybe 2 or 3 years into this rate study and come back for an addendum.
Could somebody tell me what the impact is for the town departments?
I don't know.
Well, how are you going to make that decision without knowing that and be able to explain that? I
Because
just foresee going through the board, they're going to ask that question. I'm just trying to, have you guys
okay,
prepared.
unfortunately, I do not have access to that information at this time.
But
I know that when we did that, it impacted us to the tune of losing about $60,000 a year.
so we're going to vote on something that we don't have the information on? I'm just trying to understand. This is like, it came up from a good question from the select board or a select board member, and it's been researched. I mean, how many late in the game changes are we going to make at this point, and how, where's it going to end? And I guess I'm just a little confused on where we're going with this whole thing.
Okay,
Are we not doing a tier 3 now? Are we?
No, well,
Yes,
let
I'm
me
getting
step.
a little confused
No,
here.
no, no,
What-
let me
what-
step back. I mean, I agree with Lee. I think we have sufficient information to vote on this. I don't believe I was involved in the discussions when the town was exempt from the tier 2, and I don't know why the town was exempt from tier 2 when all the ratepayers need to pay tier 2. So I'm comfortable voting on that today. And we're not, Don, looking to get rid of tier 3. We're just getting rid of tier 3 in situations where Jason's analysis has demonstrated a disparate impact on certain customers.
Okay, and Jason, I
So,
did send an email out on March 25th. Were you able to get any information about the town departments?
Sent out an email on the 25th asking what question.
No, I did bring out about bringing the town into tier 2 in that email. You never responded to it, and I didn't know whether or not you were looking into anything.
I can look into it. I didn't know I can look into.
I mean, this
Yeah.
is not something that I just dropped right now. This has been on the table here for a couple days. So,
On what day was it?
the 25th.
I'm confident this will not have a material impact on the town's
7/20,
budget.
yeah, regarding.
but what
break-
about your budget? How does this balance? So are we saying that the adjustment to Avalon to these multifamily units on our commercial customers of not being hit with the tier 3, what decrease in revenue is that gonna be? And then what increase in revenue based on you proposing tier 2 to the town? There's gotta be a balancing act, right? If we're losing revenue from one source, is this new source of revenue that you're creating covering, that? Or are we gonna have to make some adjustments on your expense side?
No, Jason already did this analysis. Jason did the analysis, is about 58,000, if I'm right, Jason. If we don't do the tier 3 on the apartments and commercial. And from Lee's recollection, adding tier 2 to the town is about 60,000. So based on that, it looks like it's pretty much a wash.
Okay,
You know, that's why I suggested it when Jason came out with that number, because that number reminded me back a number of years ago. And then, you know,
Missed that part of the email.
suggestion though, too. I don't think this is going to be a problem with our expense side. Because I was looking at the budget and I am a little concerned that the increase seemed a little high between the non-increase and the increase. And I would prefer to be a little more conservative with it. I was looking at taking out 145,413 from the water use charges because we just don't know what kind of a year we're going to have. And working with Brenda over the last 9 years, we have been more conservative there. And the only impact I can see that having would be the amount transferred to capital. Instead of being 796, it would be 651. But we
oh
don't
my
know.
God, I don't even know what to say right now. It's interesting.
Well, yeah, you know, but the thing is, we just don't know because there are all those other lines.
But where is this, why are we
What?
changing now the usage adjustment now?
Well,
I
because
just don't know, we've already started presenting, and now we're making multiple changes. I thought it was bad enough we're gonna be making changes to the town, the tier 3. Now we're gonna propose another 150 reduction in usage. And then
Well,
we're gonna
the
offset
reason
that
I'm
from the
saying
capital transfer when we've turned back hundreds of thousands a year in your other operating. The reason for this rate study and the increase, right, has been heavily driven by capital. So why would we reduce the capital transfer and what we're contributing to capital and our needs if that was really the crux of this whole thing? Like what?
Okay, because being at that presentation with Corey, when Jason said, oh, we're looking to make $377,000 by this rate increase, I think that kind of jarred people. And that is, I think.
I
a
didn't say 377, by the way. I think I said 277.
No, it
and
was
I
over
was-
300,000, you said. That's why
And
Corey
it was
said.
277, by the way. So it was 277. I was off by $30,000.
Which makes sense. I mean, if we're doing the GAC project and that adds 300 grand a year, for maintenance. I mean, that to me sounds like that's why part of the reason we're doing the increase. So if the rate increase is producing 277 or 300, that makes sense because it's heavily driven by our capital infrastructure needs and the associated maintenance with that.
Okay, well, the difference between our original budget of 2,015,000 and 2,392,000
2 million?
is 377,000. That's in just the water use charges. And this is what we were discussing when we were presenting. And this is where Corey Evans said, well, how is that going to impact our commercial users? Because that seemed like a huge jump when Jason was saying it's only $11 per average on our residential customers. And, you know, that's a big number.
So
And I'm just saying, okay, 377,000, oh, but we don't know if we're really going to get that. I was just thinking that for this first year going out, I don't want to put this big number out there, and then all of a sudden find out we're going to be coming short. And that's not going to look that good either.
I thought the original usage was based on prior history and assumptions that we weren't taking into account this abnormally high year that we've had during this pandemic. Am I wrong?
Those numbers are from Mike Schrader's report, which was done the year before COVID was done. So those, all the
we're not-
numbers were the 5 previous years from the years of whatever year we started this, which was the summer of 19.
So
So
we weren't using inflated flow usage based on this last year of our higher than anticipated use, right?
correct.
So I guess, again, we're gonna have to explain this. You're gonna have to explain this, because this is on you. I'm getting a little concerned about these changes right now. But you'd have to explain where the 130 grand came from and what, how are we making that assumption change? Are we saying that we're expecting our flows to go down X% or X hundreds of cubic feet per quarter? Or, there's gonna have to be some math, some explanation, not just picking a number out of the air that we think we're comfortable with.
Unfortunately, when we were doing this initially, before we got involved, Brenda and I sat down and said, we were considering a lower number because we wanted to be very conservative. Looking at 18, 19, and 20, we had 1.97, 2.038, and another 1.97. So we came up with, the number that came out was 2.015 for use charges, which is, right there in the ballpark. Then we added the 2.5% on there. And then after the 2.5%, it's 326,000 for the tier 3. And I don't know, that just seems high for the small population. As I said, the first person who was on the list for tier 3, you take a look at, oops, that's the wrong one. Wait a second. I don't know where I just put her. Here it is. She used 25,000, 32,000, 11,000, and 8,400 during this period. The period before was 82, 10, 10, and 42. So that's quite a drop from there. The period before that was 42, 39, 82, and 53. So, if we're looking at some of these people, maybe something happened during this period that is unrealistic. I'm just saying, I wanted to go a little conservative, see how the numbers actually come in. And then we can do a higher number next year rather than the higher number this year and possibly not meet it.
I'm okay with what Lee is suggesting.
You know, we're still waiting for other numbers to come in because we don't have, you know, the total ending number for the GAC and everything. We have estimates. But
All right,
I don't know.
it's your call. I mean, I gotta understand it before I can support it. But, you know, that's up to you guys to go through the various boards and, you know, make your presentations. So I don't necessarily agree with making decisions like this at the very last minute, but if this is, you know, where the board wants to go, I can't really do anything about it.
See, well, Don, this has come up because of what happened at that last meeting. You know, this was thrown out. So, you know, we have to make some accommodations. And you always said you wanted to be conservative, so I'm just trying to be conservative. That's all. I'm not trying to throw a monkey wrench into it, but I just want to be conservative.
I agree. I think we've been very conservative. So, yeah, I guess I don't understand the tier 3 then. Were we just basing tier 3 new revenue off of last year? Like, wasn't there a multi-year average taking for that as well? Or did we just pick last year's number? I mean, I hear what you're saying, Lee, that, you know, this is gonna be a new year for tier 3, but if we're using an average or reasonable average and assumption, there shouldn't be an enormous fluctuation.
Okay, well, Jason, how many quarters did you use to average that?
I didn't. Mike Schrader did. Mike Schrader used 5 years of information. Those numbers are from Mike Schrader, Ty and Bond's analysis of the impact of tier 3. I didn't come up with these numbers. I changed the percentages of the increases, but I didn't change the background data associated with it. All I did was change the percent increase on the spreadsheet.
So have we verified Mike Schrader's information? Because I know we had a huge problem with some of what Mike Schrader was doing. This is, yeah, a huge issue. Because if there's some problems with his numbers.
We're not saying that there's problems with the numbers, but if it was said that 300 or 270,000 would be an increase, right, from tier 3 usage, and we're going to cut 130 now arbitrarily without any support, I guess I would think that the tier 3 initially would be based on an average, some sort of assumption, not just last year's data. So if last year was abnormally high and all of a sudden we're out 30 grand because they don't use enough, that would be somewhat smooth if you took an average, and you would see variations in 5 years and would be averaged out, or whatever assumption were used. So again, that's where I guess I'm just struggling. We're gonna make one change in tier 3, add a tier 2 to the town. Then we're gonna reduce usage revenue by 140 somehow, and then reduce our capital need by 140.
Not our capital, saying the money available to go into that line item, because we don't know what that number is going to be. We never know at the end of the year. And then if you're talking about the numbers from Mike Schrader, he didn't use any of the, well, when was the last time he used numbers? What was the last date of the bills?
I have no idea.
Yeah. And then we're seeing bills that were current with the information you're giving us. Right, Jason?
Yes.
I hate to do that.
I mean, I know,
do we need to push
didn't
this
realize
off another year to really get our arms around and everybody like on the same page?
2119 is the last bill that Mike used.
What was it?
2119.
2119, okay. So that was 2 years ago.
So those numbers are probably better. Because you're not taking into consideration the year of the COVID.
Right?
And realistically speaking, COVID is not going to affect tier 3 most likely it's going to push people either from tier 1 to tier 2 or more into tier 2. It's not going to push people over 100 gallons per capita per day just because people are home flushing the toilet more. It's not. So realistically, COVID wasn't going to affect tier 3 significantly. COVID will affect people getting into tier 2.
Well, you know, another thing that we haven't thought about since it was 2 years ago, how many people have moved and changed their habits and have the same numbers come out from Avalon? That would be interesting to do an analysis, whether or not these buildings that have the high usage still have the high usage or just started having a high usage. It seems like we're missing some blocks of information here.
I think we need, you know, there's a lot of, Lee raised lots of great points. I think it's important that we push forward with the rate study and try to get it passed. And my concern is if we keep looking at different issues, it may delay it a year, as Don is saying, and I don't think we want to do that.
No, I mean, because we had to adjust it from last year because it was only a 2% increase, wasn't it? And then we raised it to 2.5 because we had the delay in not getting an increase over the last year. You know, but I would feel more comfortable if I really knew what the apartment rates. Now, condos aren't considered in this, are they, Brenda?
No.
No,
Condos would have their own
Individual
meters, right?
No?
yes.
Yes.
Well, doesn't a condo on South Main Street or,
No, I have that listed as a single family, Lee. I
Yeah.
didn't realize those were condos. They do get charged the unmetered charge. I just assumed they were apartments.
yeah, because I think there's also the one across from the motel that,
Those aren't condos, that's a multi-unit apartment building.
is it? I thought there were condos over there. Okay.
Oh, are you talking like directly across, right at the corner of where Billy
Yeah.
lives? Those are individually monitored and they're condos.
Okay. Yeah, because I know we did those other condos across from the baseball field. They were individually
Yeah,
done.
correct.
Because I'm not sure how many others there are around town, because I remember when we were doing it, there were 300 units. And I didn't know how many were just apartments or how many were condos. Hi, Meg, do you have any questions about anything we're doing?
Hi, apologies for being late. Thanks for letting me be here. I don't. I thank you. I've read up on the emails and all the information. So thank you for all the work you're doing. And I'm really just here to listen and support you in any way that I can.
Thank you. I've got about another half hour just to give a heads up, so,
Yeah, we hopefully will be done before then.
okay.
No, so, well,
Because
if we
you
make a
asked,
decision about,
I will answer the question. It looks like, and I can share this spreadsheet with you, that on average, Avalon is always over 55,100 cubic feet. I just looked through Mike's spreadsheet that he had from Brenda, and I'm just scrolling through, and the majority of the numbers are 5,000 or greater on usage per quarter.
see, well, I'm really concerned because you have the buildings going from 4 to 10 apartments. And for a 4 apartment building to be using the same amount of water as a 10 apartment building.
They could be 4-bedroom apartments in a
No, they
four-unit
couldn't be
building.
because they're only supposed to be 1 to 2 bedroom apartments. That
But
was the
I mean,
agreement.
but you
for
don't,
them
you
to
don't,
build.
you can't compare people's use to people's use. There could be people sleeping on couches. Who knows what happens in each individual unit? I mean, generally speaking, you don't look at unit by unit comparison. It's just a broad brush. In general speaking, they are over 5,100
1,500.
cubic feet
1,500, yeah.
on average for 4 quarters. And also under 65 gallons per capita per day, significantly under 65 gallons per capita per day on a regular basis.
Yeah. You know, I mean, because it just seems so strange, because when you have, yeah, if you have small units too, some of them aren't using that much. And it just seems like there are just certain buildings. So I don't know.
You know, usage is hard. Usage is hard to really use. Like you said, it's usage is habit forming. You know, just from my own experience, you know, you can have the biggest home in the street and you use less power than the house next door that's smaller. It's all habit, and it's all habit forming. That's what it comes down to. You know, somebody runs irrigation 24/7, or you know,
But
somebody
the
in
thing is, the
Avalon.
apartments are more of a turnover than,
Well, yeah, I mean, if there's a lot of turnover in apartments, then you have different people coming in. You know, again, same I run the water for the little kids for an hour. I know my wife did it, and I had to really stop to cut it out. You know, but you know, the biggest problem
but
is
you run a well.
I know, but I pay sewer, but the biggest problem is, I know it's a lot about the Avalon, is that past boards, you know, I'm assuming it's before John's time, again, is I'll be a repeated horse, that, you know, shame on us for not having them individually metered, you know, but again, you can't change the past, but you know, Lee, I love your proposal, and I also like Jason's. It's like, which apple pie do I want?
All right, well, you
No,
know,
it's-
I think a question that may come up, Jason, is exactly how many properties are we eliminating from the tier 4?
Tier 3.
Or, I'm sorry, tier 3. Getting ahead of myself here.
Yeah.
69
69 total,
69 accounts.
69 accounts. And these are all the apartments plus all the commercial
Yes,
and Sunrise.
that's commercial.
Okay. Because here it's listed as apartments
Oh.
on that sheet you gave,
Sure, apartments.
but, and I know that there's a big issue there with them irrigating. Which is, yeah, to look at their account to go up $10,000 between quarters because of irrigation is a lot. If you take a look at Bill 2, because it's your number one account, 5153. It went 11,000, 21,000, down to 10,000, and then down to 8,400. Because that's an awful lot of water they're using, but there's nothing we can do about that. All right, well, let's decide that we want to eliminate the commercial and the apartments, which were 69 accounts from tier 3. Is that going to be a problem for Brenda?
No, it's my understanding that if we're doing this,
Mm-hmm.
all commercial and all multi-units will get a 2-tiered rate, not just 69, all of them.
Yes,
Okay. But I'm just saying all of them that were considered in the tier 3 are eliminated, definitely.
Yeah.
And hopefully none of the others will have gone into that.
Well, Jason and I have already kind of discussed it. I'll make the adjustments. I'll run some reports before this happens in August, if it happens in August, to make sure all the multi-units are included with the 2-tier rate and nothing hopefully falls through the cracks. If it does, we'll do abatements.
All right, I'm gonna second Lee's motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now, the other thing we have to discuss before we move on to the next one is we're going to have a change in the bills that is going to indicate what we're doing.
Say that again? I'm sorry.
I said we're gonna have a
Okay.
change in the format of the bills to indicate what we're doing.
Well, once it's decided, you know, if you
Okay,
got,
once it passes a town meeting. You're saying, then we
well,
can,
I want to give my programmer a heads up because,
Yeah.
you know, this could happen. And if it
Mhm.
does, how are we prepared to format the bills to show a 3-tiered rate? And are we going to show that for all bills or just the ones who are being affected by it?
I don't know. Wouldn't it be more difficult to do?
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, it's going to show all 3 rates, all 3 tiers.
Yeah, but I mean, wouldn't you also have a separate indication about the commercial rate? That is only tier 1 or tier 2?
Generally,
I don't know. I don't know how,
Given it-
how it's shown
Yeah, I
typically.
mean, the bill is so busy anyways. You also got to remember sewer rates are in there, their service fees are all in that middle section. You know, obviously it's gonna have to be reformatted, maybe some stuff be thrown on the back of the bill. Where we have.
Well, yes, I'm thinking about the Weymouth and the Hingham bills. They're 8.5 by 10 sheets of paper with information on the front and the back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't gotten that far into it yet because we're not that far into it yet. You guys hadn't voted on anything, 3-tier, 2-tier. I haven't reached out to Danny.
Okay,
I
well,
mean,
no, just in
well,
case someone asks us that question.
so he does work with other towns. I'm sure other towns have multiple tier rates, do water and sewer billing together. So I would leave it up to the professionals.
Well, you know, we're lucky that we're not like, let's see, Weymouth even has their trash pickup on their water bill. So, okay, I think we need a motion about the town rate. Anybody want to do it?
I'll make a motion that the town will be subject to both tier 1 and tier 2 as part of the new rate study.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
That motion was unanimously adopted. Okay, now, do we want to get a little more conservative on our budget? For what we're looking at is the water use charges, to be a little more conservative on them, which will then give us a more conservative number transferring to capital. You know, I was only just suggesting to do this for the first year to see how the numbers come out, so that we have more of a feel for it when we're doing the budget next year.
I think being conservative is a good idea. Don, is this going to create a big issue if we get a little more conservative?
You know, you don't have to take the number I put out. We could take any number, you know, just to,
So I don't have a good answer for it. I mean, again, I'd like to see some sort of calculation as how you're determining that, right? So we're saying if we have our rate right now based on a formula, what are you going to change in your assumption to reduce and be more conservative? So that's up to you how you want to play that.
okay,
In
well,
that
no. but
Transfer to
the other is-
capital, we're supposed
Yeah.
to be doing some capital projects this year, I believe, right?
Mhm.
And then we had a little extra in there because of the timing of the 300,000 maintenance that most likely will be coming online the year after once the GAC project is completed. So you have a little bit of wiggle room, but I wouldn't keep just adjusting that transfer to capital, because that now in the next year, you're going to be whatever you reduce this by, your budget is going to be $140,000 behind what you need for the next year, right? Because
Okay.
in the following year, that
Yeah.
300 needs to be in that budget. So of that 700 and something thousand that we have as a transfer to capital, we're proposing to do $400 or $500,000 project out of there. We have potential debt service coming online. And then the 300 that's kind of built in there based on the rate study because of the 300 for maintenance of GAC. So you start playing around with the numbers at this point. I just think you might be a little behind. I'm okay if you do it, but I'd like to see some sort of rhyme or reason as to, how you're coming up.
Okay, I'll tell you what my reasoning is. Because we have just removed those 69 accounts from the tier 3.
Yep.
And even though we are putting the town on, I don't know what that's going to be a total wash. And in the event that we do not come up to the projected tier 3 number from Mike Schroeder, that's the only thing I am concerned about. If we even just make a little adjustment to it, just in case, rather than saying, oh, here, this is what we're really projecting, because, these numbers are always a crapshoot, as they say. You can just throw it at the wall and see what comes down, because you never know what you're going to sell.
You don't know, but again, it's usually based on a formula, an average, a projection based on current conditions and what's happening. So I get it. It's somewhat of a crapshoot of what actually gets billed, but the projections are based mathematically and based on assumptions, educated guesses, I would say, which are assumptions. So it's not necessarily, I think calling it a crapshoot is kind of minimizing the coming up with a budget here. But
Well,
I
no,
think-
it's a crapshoot about what the weather's going to be, because
Yeah.
depending on what the weather is, that's how much we're going to sell.
I think the best way to deal with this, if Lee and Steve are okay with it, is that we appoint Lee to work directly with Don to come up with the adjustment. I do like Lee's idea of being a little more conservative, and Lee can work with Don on coming up with the exact number and how to support it.
Well, unfortunately, we need this number before we go to Meg's meeting on Thursday.
No
And this-
pressure.
No, nothing at
So,
all.
I mean, between now and when's the 5th?
Now on Thursday?
When's the 5th? That's Tuesday, right?
No. We had the advisory meeting Thursday.
Oh,
I know, I was gonna say, I think y'all are this week, aren't you?
Yes, Thursday.
Yep, okay.
So,
Yes.
I mean, look, you have the assumptions right now, the budget based on the usage of Mike Schrader. If you want to reduce it by 100 grand or whatever you want, fine. We'll just note that it's a manual, an adjustment to be conservative.
I mean,
I would say let's do that.
okay,
Let's make a vote. Do we need to make a vote on it?
yes,
And so let me just ask, so you're proposing that reduction and then reducing your transfer to capital by 100,000?
well, I don't know. Do you see anything in expenditures? Jason? That,
All of them. I do. I mean,
no, but the other thing that we have to think about though too is, here is something coming down, 2 other things coming down the pike that we're gonna have to deal with next year or the year after. If we do get the solar array, that may give us a big boost because we're going to dramatically decrease our electric use, right, Steve?
correct.
Okay, so we have that. And then the other problem we don't know is what's going to happen with the well field. If we have to eliminate the well field, we're going to have to make some major changes. Because that will definitely affect our bottom line.
make it to capital for now, and we'll see as time goes on what we have to adjust in future years.
Well, I mean, this is what I'm saying. Let's see what we have to adjust in future years. See, what my thinking is, if we decrease the water usage and then it comes in higher, we look like we're heroes. But if
You're
it
looking at
comes in
last year,
lower,
we did have a
look like
deficit
we're
in that
bums.
year, but
Having gone through this cycle so many times.
so, yeah, I think that's fine.
I'll just take 100 out.
Take 100 out.
Or you know what? We can even just take 45,413 out.
Do a round number.
Do a round number, make it a
We're
round
making
number.
it, we're making a, again, this is somewhat not random. We're being conservative. We're reducing it. Let's call it an even 100. And again, we're not going to have I just think it's gonna be more work appointing Lee and I to try to figure this out when it's, I mean, it's, I got enough going on, to be honest, in 100 grand, you know, 100 grand is 100 grand. We got retained earnings we should be using, which, again, I mean, I think we should be using that for a project or two in this cycle, or reauthorizing one of the projects that we authorized borrowing for retained earnings. So I'm not gonna argue about it, but 100 grand is fine. Let's do that. I think we have some other discussions to have by the time town meeting comes, so that we can at least approve one or two of these projects with retained earnings to start using that surplus that we do have set aside
Yes,
already.
I would definitely agree with you on that. But
Great.
you have to excuse me, I spent 30 years with the guy who set up the Northeast region for HUD. I hired him as my controller, and we spent 30 years going back and forth over numbers.
Sure.
All right, can I make a motion that we go with the 100 grand adjustment to be conservative?
I'll second that motion.
All right, you second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then we'll just take that money out of transfer to capital rather than, because it's all going to end up in the same pot anyhow, right, Don? At the end of
Yeah, I
the,
mean, really, that transfer to capital, based on how we have, I think the project now, we were planning on using about 430 grand, you know, call it from rate instead of debt for the engineering for the GAC filtration, construction, and another project.
Mhm.
I think we should either use retained earnings for that, and this whole 700,000 will just go into your actual water capital stabilization for a future year. I think there's more to discuss, but so right
But we
now,
do have cash to do this.
what's that?
I said we do have cash to do this and we're not borrowing. And you know, something else that I do want to bring up, because this is something I hear from so many people. Why do we still have that 170? It's so much money, and why is it going up? And I think we should have a list of the projects we've done during the last 6 years that we didn't have to borrow for, that we use from our retained earnings. So that when, if anybody questions this, we could say, here, we've been managing ourselves very well and we have not gone out into borrowing, but we have some massive ones coming up now that will demand borrowing. You know, because like we did the loop, we did the tank behind Avalon.
And what was the 170 that you were referring to? What was that number?
Lee, that money was earmarked to pay back the debt.
Oh, yeah, that money was earmarked to pay back the debt, and people can't understand why we're not getting rid of it.
Right, but if you're.
You know, the
saying
debt
that
that's
we
going to be
use
gone
it-
in 2032.
Yeah, but if you're saying we use that money to do the loop and do that.
No, no,
that's
no, no,
back to
no.
debt.
I'm saying we didn't add to the debt.
Oh, okay.
Right.
That we were fiscally conservative in the last 6 years,
And-
that we were able, because we were so fiscally conservative and managing well, that we were able to get all of these capital projects done without going into debt and increasing that number. That's all I'm
Right,
saying.
because so in the way that worked is because we didn't borrow. What
Mhm.
happened was that borrowing, so in the year that debt service dropped 50,000, instead of reducing the budget and reducing potential rate, what we did was move that 50 grand from debt into your operating accounts for a number of years, which is why we've had all these, you know, multiple years of $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 of turnbacks, which generate retained earnings. So
Mhm.
they all relate to each other. So
Yeah, they all relate.
I
to
don't
each
think we
other.
need to
All I'm saying
document 6
is-
years of what we spent cash for. If you want to go through that exercise, you can. But again, this is why, you know, with our good reserves and our conservative budgeting in this plan, we should have the flexibility right now to use retained earnings and what we need to
Mhm.
in lieu of borrowing. In
Yeah,
any
but
given year.
that's all I'm saying is that we haven't been borrowing and we've been doing substantial work to show people that, hey, we are actually doing stuff and not coming to you for more borrowing to increase this number. But since we have these new regulations, we're going to have to be borrowing. That's all I'm saying, just to kind of give people more peace of mind so that they keep looking at this and they say, oh, it was supposed to be gone by 2025 or 2026 and it's not. And they don't understand and they think that we've been just going hog wild crazy borrowing more money. That, you know, this is just something that I hear out there in Neverland. And if we could allay fears and tell them that, hey, this is what we inherited and we've been moving along with it and we haven't borrowed. That's all. But whatever. That's something for another day. Okay, any other issues? Now, are we all set? Who's coming on Thursday? John, you're not, right? Because I'll be there. Don and Jason, are you coming? I'm sure.
I'm at every advisory meeting. Yep.
Lucky you.
Oh,
know.
boy. I know that one last week went on and on and on.
Yeah, making me long.
That was crazy. Okay.
I'll be in
So,
attendance, but I don't want to be any panelist.
okay. And
And
then,
so just so you guys are, so you guys made the votes tonight. Basically, if I could just get an updated budget so that I can forward that to advisory. They've
Mhm.
requested a snapshot, which I will CC you guys on. It's a form that all the other departments, I basically put together for them, taking information from the budget document, what you have sent me, prior year accomplishments, future goals, and then just literally just saying how much the new budget is compared to the last, what the percentage increase is or decrease, and then what your next few years of capital items are. So once I have this updated budget for this change, I will forward that in the snapshot to advisory for Thursday. I will CC the three of you and Brenda and Jason, and then we should be all set for Thursday evening.
and are we, for Monday also, is there any issue that anybody wants to bring up for Monday? Because I saw all the reports you sent to capital budget,
What is Monday?
capital budget. And thank goodness it's not Tuesday because that's my anniversary and I would have been a little pissed. No.
So
Yeah, those
Monday,
are
they're
all
gonna
forms-
probably ask what we're gonna, how we're funding these. And so I'm not really prepared to figure out which ones are which, but I think one of them, at least, we should be using retained earnings for one of them. I think
Oh,
we should propose using retained earnings for that engineering, Jason, right? The 400 and something thousand. And
Yeah, so
Mark was looking-
if you look at the 3 projects, 2 of them require engineering services, and then there's construction dollars after. So we were discussing paying cash or retained earnings for the engineering portion of the 3.6 and the chlorine conversion 200 and I can't remember. I gotta pull this up. I'm updating the budget. The engineering portion of those funded out of cash and then borrow for the construction as one big construction project.
So as long as you guys, if you guys could vote on that, so at least Jason can make that note during the capital meeting, we should be all set. Because if they're considering your projects, they're gonna want to know the funding source so we can get that into the warrant article. That makes sense or no?
Well, the Warren article says cash borrowing or whatever. So if it is partial, but
What, no. When you go to town meeting, we need to know which ones are authorized for borrowing, because it's specific
Okay.
language. So we need to know that, and so I would suggest a vote at one point. It doesn't need to be done now, you can think about it, but we can explain to capital that,
well, we'll have to
That's our-
explain that Monday. So we're looking for cash for engineering for the upcoming projects and borrowing for the construction of them.
Yeah.
Is
So
that
we can, like Dawn said, we can come up with exact numbers for what those percentages are of the totals. But that'll be the generic answer for Monday night.
Okay. And borrowing for those. So
So just so everybody's on the same page, this is the change. We decreased the water use charge by 100,000
Okay,
and decreased the transfer to capital by 100,000.
And you also decreased your number of total revenue by 100,000.
That's what I said, by water
Okay.
use charges.
No, water use and the other number,
well,
just to make
there-
sure everybody saw that.
What other, oh, you mean total?
That-
Yes, that by definition goes down.
Just so they didn't get confused. Okay, so we're just looking at now, when they ask the question for capital budget on Monday, you can answer approximately how much is going from cash and how much is going from borrowing.
Mhm.
But depending on whether or not we actually get the project done in the next fiscal year, that's still up in the air.
Right, we're authorizing borrowing, whether it actually gets borrowed or
Authorize-
not, because of our flexibility with retained earnings. You
Yep.
know, maybe there's a portion of a that we use cash.
Well,
Maybe we do a portion of cash and then borrowing.
and
At
the other
least the
part,
authorization is there so that we can get it started if need be.
and we need appropriation to borrow for the sake of, as we discussed, putting this in for SRF funding this summer. By having it already authorized to borrow, it gives you additional points in the scoring chart for SRF funding. And given the current administration's push for infrastructure improvements, they will funnel that money through the SRF program as an option. So there may be opportunity for 2%, 0%, or debt forgiveness potential in that program. So we are slotting to apply for the water treatment plant upgrades in August in that funding program.
Because that's advantageous to us and it makes it easier to explain to everyone.
I'm just going to say that we need to have the borrowing authorized for grant application purposes.
Well, yeah, no, well, and that's what people like to hear, that we are applying for all grants.
Yep.
And hopefully keeping our fingers crossed that we get them like we got that last one for, oh, how's that one coming at the well field? Have we started?
We
Anything?
have DEP has approved theoretical pumping to waste at Elms Meadow. We are working on an official plan to submit to them for approval.
Are we going to be able to finish that by the end of June?
See what happens.
Because they were
We'll do our
what, two
best.
months behind and,
I know, but we started the day we got authorization. So
well, I know, but I'm just saying with 2 months taken out of it, that's considerable. We'll keep our fingers crossed that maybe they'll do extensions.
I apologize, but I need to jump off.
Okay, well, I think
Thank you,
we're finished,
everybody.
and, we'll just work for our next regular meeting next month as we usually do. Okay, I will call for an
Thank
adjournment
you.
of today's meeting at, what time is it? 4:14.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous by all of us. And